been a couple of questions. I'm trying to like bucket them for time. So one of them actually is a question for drive to Paldeep actually, and that is how does genetic engagement differ from genetic risk identification? I think you're on mute. Still on mute, Paldeep.
Yeah, I'm
there you go.
Yeah, all right, great. So how does genetic risk identification differ from
genetic engagement? So genetic engagement versus genetic risk identification.
So yeah, I'm not. So genetic risk identification, I think, you know, so that for me, and it might be different for other people, is you know, identifying what, based on your genetics, what conditions you may be at elevated or decreased risk for. Genetic engagement, I'm not actually too familiar with that term, to be honest. Is that a term that's I mean, for me that sounds like just understanding what genetics can teach you. Is more perhaps educational, but if there's a further meaning to that term,
yeah. So perhaps whoever sent that question, you want to just shoot us some extra information on that, that'd be great. But I guess, you know, my interpretation, maybe incorrectly, would be literally like genetic counseling. So there's obviously a risk identification, and I'm probably interpreting this question the wrong way, but what then? How does counseling play a role then? What do you understand?
Yeah. So I think counseling is critical because there's so many caveats and nuances to genetics and genetic risk that most conditions have some sort of multifactorial, even Mendelian conditions have some sort of multifactorial risk factors. So to try and put that all together, particularly with someone with no genetic background, no medical background, I think that's very difficult and sometimes impossible. So often it requires pre and post test education and counselling from genetic professionals. Traditionally, that's been in an office setting in a one-to-one environment. More and more, we're seeing now patient-friendly educational content, interactive content that has been evaluated and audited for user comprehension, video content, also group counseling type sessions that are much more scalable than individual. So I think there's always, ultimately in healthcare, people are always going to want to talk to someone and a real person and know that they're speaking to someone that has empathy and cares for what they're going through. So I think there's always going to be a role for counseling.
Well, we actually got a note back saying that was actually the intention of the question. So thank you, Paldeep. It was on that. Yeah, and I think you spoke to the personalization, which actually leads to the next question. I'll back it up and serve it up to Tom and to Brian and to Matthew. Perhaps we'll start with Tom. Same question, but through your conversation, we spoke a little bit about the movement from broad-based point solutions to broad-based mental health intervention. We also spoke about how employees are looking for tighter integration, the easy button, so to speak. So the question is, what is the role of a point solution today, with the comment specifically that was mentioned that there's a disconnect with one-off solutions? So if we know it's about precision solutions and it's tailoring to meet someone where they're at and all this personalization, but yet we know employees want easy button integration, not disconnected, how do we put this whole piece together? What's the role of the point solution in this emerging trend of integration and easy button? I'll serve that up. Tom, you first.
So I think there are two answers to that depending on the point solution. One is, to the extent that it's tied to a clinical or therapeutic or diagnostic process, then it's how does that fit with the workflow, the physician workflow, the doctor-patient experience, and where does that handoff occur? It doesn't necessarily need to be technological. It could be a workflow kind of integration. It has to be thought through. And I think that's more specific, and I would say the minority. The majority of the situation is how does it fit with the broader employee benefit ecosystem? So, and unfortunately, every employer is a little different. So you have to look at what exists at that employer. What are the other ancillary health and wellness benefits that that employer's got? What already are they purchasing through payers? Actually spending extra money on with that payer to do one thing or another, and how does this point solution fit across that ecosystem? And I think the easy place to start is to ask the question, where can the rest of that ecosystem serve to push adoption of this point solution, so you can show that synergy? And then the other side is, where can this point solution allow connections to what the employers already purchased and the employees already have access to, and where can that be a feeder to these other health and wellness programs?
That's well said, Tom.
I have to, Laura, I have to jump on moderator's privilege here and say a last word before I have to run down the corridor to my panel here. But I think there's a really interesting question from the employer perspective here, right? Which is there going to be somebody who's going to be able to give me everything? And the answer is that, as in any other business, larger players will buy up more and more solutions. Health plans will do that, and we'll start offering things. But you'll find that a lot of the most innovative stuff is done by somebody doing one thing very well, because that's how things tend to work. And so by definition, this is never going to go away. And we're going to see more and more marketplace approaches. Think of the App Store as the ultimate one, where new, really interesting stuff happens. Some innovative employers are going to find that it works very well. Those individual point solutions are going to spread, and either they're going to acquire other things they can sell, or they're going to be acquired, or they're going to remain doing what they're doing. But waiting for the all singing, all dancing, one-off button solution to solve mental health, maternity, chronic disease, prevention, down the list, is never going to happen in our current system. So, the answer from an employer perspective is you got to keep working with people like the Brians and the Toms of the world, and scanning the market, because there's probably something good out there, and there are a lot more entrepreneurs with ideas really than there probably are than there are anything else in America, and that's what we America and Canada for that matter. That's what we're going to see.
Right. You're on the mark, Matt.
I've got to run, but thank you very much, guys.
Matt, thank you. Stuff. So, Brian, we have a webinar on a tight timeline shutting us down in 2 minutes. So, Brian, in like a minute and a half or less, if you want to bring it home for us, wrap it in a bow for us. What are your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, well, I agree with Matthew. We're actually seeing, as part of the market maturing, you're seeing a spectrum of open versus closed platform approaches. Some are rolling up and being a tight closed platform that's trying to be the one thing, stop shop for everything. Some are trying to do a marketplace of curating multiple third parties. And then you have another class, or companies like Zelf, that are trying to be digital formularies or prescriptions that both help with the prescribing in the workflow, as well as bringing the data back. So in general, this is similar to what we've seen with other nascent markets emerging and how they evolve. Similar to, if you look at disease management and condition management back in the 90s, you're seeing a different wave now. I think, as Matthew pointed, the difference there is you likely won't see stabilization. It will likely just continue to iterate.
That's great. No, thank you. So thank you so much to our panelists. Again, the shout out to, we had Paldeep from PWN, we had Brian from Accenture, Tom from AbbVie, and Matt from Smack Health. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. Before it shuts down, make sure to have a great lunch. And it looks like work in progress for all of us. So we shall continue with our efforts to solve an ongoing issue of prevention and finding the right mix of precision technology and good old-fashioned people. So thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.